We are Lagos Talks 91.3. Let's talk.
The club owners have spoken well. They basically articulated every problem that is wrong, dodgy officiating, lack of sponsorship, the match not being on television, security, everything that we talk about week in, week out. So we pray. For me, this time addressing myself to the NFF President Ibrahim Gusau, please, Mr. President, just, if it's only one thing you do in your term, in your next 4 years, let it be, try and build up our league, please. I think for me, that's the start of everything. I think everything is linked. I think that's the cement, the glue that links everything together. If we can start the league, if we can get them, we can be looking at grassroots, we can look at certain things, everything will fall if we can just sort out the league. For me, if we can get our league and even competing on the African continent, if we can sort out our league, get the league back on television, get sponsorships for the league, let there be integrity in match officiating, so that when you're going to play away, you send your second team because you're going to lose anyway, and all those shenanigans. Let there be genuine competition. It will be very nice. And then the people that complain to the club owners too are the biggest culprits of all those things they complain about, because it's the club owners too and chairman that bribe these same match officials. The match officials do not bribe themselves. You know what I'm saying? So so everybody has to come together. Because the truth of the matter, nobody wants who's going to sponsor it, but you can't blame sponsors. Sponsors are not stupid. Nobody's going to put, especially if you're looking at private sector participation. Anybody is running a company is running for profit. Why will I invest my money in a product that's defective? I won't do that. So the onus is on them to polish up and get their act together. So I really hope, that among, the elections happened and all these funny people that want to go into court and all that, let me go and sit down and let's look at this game and try and improve our league. Because some people say, hey, let's scrap the league for 2 years. Let's all sit down and do nothing. Is that going to help? After 2 years, we will not come back and be where we are supposed to go. So I know what? Has a clean slate. I beg. Let them do something. The club owners too, who are part of the problem too. Let them look. Let them have a road to Damascus moment and look inside their hearts too. About, do they really, really, really want this league to be better? They should try. I beg people.
When you talk about the league, the good old when you talk about the league in Nigeria, a lot of people make a lot of reference to when it was really very good back in the 70s, back in the 80s,
and the early 90s,
maybe the early 90s. And somebody made a very valid point on social media. And he says, look, when our league was everything that we thought it was, yeah, how many times did we actually win anything on the continent? In the 70s, it was IICC. In 70,
and Rangers.
In 76, yeah, and Rangers, back in the 70s. Within that time frame, how many times did we win the Africa Cup of Nations? Just one time in 1980. And then you fast forward to when maybe Iwanwo National did something in the 90s, yeah? And then you fast forward again to when Enyimba won it in 2003 and 2004. So when you put all of that, into cognizance, where exactly is it that we can say that Nigerian football really has been glorious? Back in the day, did we not have integrity as far as our football is concerned? Did we not have good officiating? We did. Was there funding? Yes, there was. Was there match integrity? Yes, there was. Remuneration back in the day was good enough. All the likes of Segun Odegbami, Christian Chukwu were earning a decent living playing for 3SC and Rangers Football Club.
Yes.
They were all earning a decent living. But how many times did we actually make good impact on the continent? So maybe all of these things are things we face today, and everyone's jumping on this rhetoric. And yes, the Football Federation is saying all of the right stuff. We need to get all of these things right. I agree, no doubt about that. But then again, at the end of the day, it's about what you're able to attract. The PSL started when? And today they're known as one of the top leagues on the African continent. Why? Because they're able to attract not just players from God knows anywhere around the world, but quality coaches as well. quality coaches. I think that's what's missing as far as our football is getting people, and not just attracting players from the fringes of West Africa. We're talking about getting players from, having somebody from Al Hilal or Al Ali coming wanting to play in the NPFL would help improve not just our game but our players themselves. It's not just about money. It's not just about money.
I agree with you on all that, but there's been one consistent, abiding constant in everything you said about the quality from the 60s till now, and Nigeria represent the quality of opposition on the continent has always been very high. So even when our clubs were their best, we always came up against crack opposition from the likes of a particular team from Guinea. Their name, I'm sure Thomas is listening, and their name, they broke our hearts so many times. Rangers, the likes of Zamalek, the likes of us, they've always been good because they've always. So for me, whatever we did on the continent, I don't think that points up. The fact is, our domestic league was thriving. The fact is, up to 1994, we were providing, or whenever Stephen Keshi led that exodus of Nigerian players to Europe, this country, the likes of NMB, the likes of Leventis, the likes of Julius Berger, the likes of Abiola Babes, the likes of Bendel Insurance, the likes of YM, the likes of Rangers produced excellent players who now left the shores of this country to establish themselves in the national team and make names for them. In fact, there were so many players I couldn't even get into the likes of Jonathan. Jonathan was never really a regular, but Jonathan was an excellent player.
And maybe that's when the problem started now, Shegun. That exodus, maybe that's when the problem started. So as much as we hail...
I don't see it as a problem. I see, you see, Nigeria has such a massive...
But we complain every time a Nigerian footballer is successful in the NPFL, the next thing he's abroad. Because the general mentality is that, look, you can only be who you want to be when and if you leave the shores of this country. It's not working. It's not working well for us now.
No, you said just now that it would be nice if we could attract players from abroad.
That's what I'm saying. You attract players from abroad, and at the same time, it keeps your best players here.
Exactly. If you give them a level playing field. Is it in the place?
What do you mean by level? What do you mean by level play? What do you mean by level playing field?
Is it a place that we will have to bribe a coach for trials, or where you play?
But why is the end goal always the national team? You don't always have to end up in the national team. Some players.
Nobody's saying no. Look, if you guys would listen to me and listen to what I'm saying, it's not about the national team. Even in those days, so some players as good as them couldn't even get into the national team, but they got careers abroad. What I'm saying is make the product that we have here attractive enough. Players not only stay in Nigeria, but will attract players from abroad. The onus is I spoke about the product. Why would sponsors put money in a defective product? Right now, the Nigerian league is defective because of all those things that the club owner themselves listed. They didn't tell it's everything they said it problems of the league. So let's go about sorting it out.
But some of the problems they mentioned is also their fault.
No, we already dealt with it. We already dealt with it. The argument is that the argument we're making, Femi, because you were not here, was, look, back in the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s, Nigerian football was at its very highest.
Yes.
Yeah? And even at that time, how many times did we actually win anything continental?
We didn't win. We didn't
win much.
We didn't win. We were making finals of the but we're getting.
We didn't win much. Who remembers who got to the finals? It's about who wins at the end of the day. It's about making.
No, but that's a good point. That's a very good point.
You always say that.
That's a very good point.
You always say that.
No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
You always say nobody remembers who won. It's the person who won that.
No, but that's a good point. That's a very good point.
You get to the final, you don't win.
No, that's the point you make.
You always make that point.
That's the point you make.
But you always make that point. You always say it now. But now it's convenient for you.
We are Lagos Talk 91.3. Let's talk.